Hi, and welcome to another episode of Voice of the Street Preachers. Whether I'm getting creative or just plain lazy, you decide, but I'm going to be interviewing a whole group of street preachers here this time, naming them the Mississippi Boys, the Sons of Thunder here from Mississippi, Sons of Thunder from down under, down in the bayou here, but these guys are from Mississippi, obviously, and we're up here at Southern Decadence, or over here in New Orleans, and get to learn a little bit about them. It's the first time I've actually met two out of the three of them, and get to learn a little bit about why they got into this. And okay, we're here with the Mississippi Boys. State your name, and basically just real briefly, how did you get started in street preaching, and why you are a street preacher? Let's start here first.
All right, my name is Keith Dalton. How I got involved in street preaching, kind of a long story, try to make it short. Basically, I got preached to outside of a movie theater a long time ago. I thought I was a Christian by a street preacher named Perry Bonin and his church, and thought I was a Christian. It really kind of made me angry. Years go by, I keep running into street preachers. Ran into James Lyman preaching at Cornerstone Music Festival. Our band was playing there, actually. We used to be in a punk rock band, and they preached to us there. And then also, one year, the year before or 2 years before, Reuben Israel was with some, I guess like an independent Baptist church or something, I don't know. But they preached to us at the same place. And so I kept running into street preachers, and I kept battling what they were saying was true. I just didn't want to hear it. So we started doing Bible studies. Like I said, thought we were Christians, at least me. And we're doing Bible studies. God was really dealing with me about truths in the Bible. And I just got real convicted, repented, turned to Christ, tried to make this part a little short. It just kept growing. And we drove outside of an abortion mill and saw all these people at the abortion mill saying, hey, well, if you agree with this, you should come join us. And I was like, I don't know. Well, God really dealt with me. And I fell on my face just weeping and went home just weeping. And God was like, you need to start going there. And during this whole time, I was looking up videos. Buddy Fisher is one I actually seen online, and Kerrigan Skelly and some others, and I wasn't really sure how I felt about it. But we started going there, and I just prayed and tried ministering to some of the people. And then I just started lifting my voice, started preaching, and started watching more videos. And one of our first actual preaches was actually Southern Decadence. And that was 4 years ago.
Well, tell people who don't know, what is Southern Decadence? Oh. We're here this weekend at Southern Decadence.
Sure.
What is that? A Christian music festival, or what is that?
Labor Day Christian music festival. Well, it's what it says. There are a bunch of Christians out here.
Yeah.
From what I hear, a bunch of people that just sinners saved by grace. Southern Decadence, what it says, Southern Decadence means moral decline, so it's a judgment against himself. But it's one of the largest, sodomite kind of festival party events that goes on. It's in New Orleans.
It's kind of giving Bourbon Street a bad name, isn't it?
Yeah, because Bourbon was, a pretty good, wholesome family location before, but, they kind of ruined it,
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a lot of good families that come out here with their children, and the wives with their wives. So, but no, it's mostly it's not as many lesbians there as that, but it's mostly you can call them men, I guess, males that come out here. It's more of a gay guy type thing, but it's really disgusting. A lot of drunkenness, a lot of sexual lewd acts that you see. I mean, maybe not that extreme, but a lot of nakedness, nudity, just all out vile, and so it's a pretty weird event. But that was one of our first preaches, and just kept rolling from there. We met more people, different preachers, and the Bible commands us to go and preach the gospel and preach. Caruso means to lift your voice like a trumpet, or lift your voice. It's a public herald. So I believe it's I believe for me it was a command from God and from what the Bible said. So I just wanted to obey Jesus. And also one of the things it did for me is I wanted to live holy. And, you know, I would go after Christ. I was living holy, but one thing that preaching did is it put me in a spotlight where God's spotlight was constantly on me. And it made me really examine myself. Awesome. So I'm real thankful for preaching. And it's grown me. I've learned a lot. But that's kind of basically how I got into it. Just seeing videos, God convicted me, seeing other preachers. And it's just grown from there. I've met tons of people.
Awesome.
And we just... Locally, it's more of a faithful thing with our church, and we try to really be faithful locally and go out when we can. So,
awesome, awesome. All right, well, who's this guy here in the middle, and what is your story?
I'm Austin Pilgreen, and it's all his fault.
Everybody's got somebody who dragged them into. That's how I got it. I made the mistake of telling somebody, "Hey, I'll come out with you, and maybe I can pass out tracts." And inside of a few months, I'm down on Bourbon Street having like urine dumped on my head or whatever. So you gotta be careful before you get into this. All right, sorry, go ahead. Who are you, and how did you get into this street preaching?
I'm Austin, and me and Keith, we've known each other for, I guess, almost 15 years now. Something 12, 15 years now. And I always, the way I met Keith way back in the day is I always grew up playing music, and I also grew up as a nominal Christian. And we were in a Christian punk band and stuff like that.
Punk band.
Anyway, we met our wives, and the band parted ways, and we ended up me and my wife ended up leaving, moving away, and then we ended up moving back to Mississippi, mainly because that's where, you know, all the people that we knew and, you know, all of our friends were. And me and Keith said, "Hey, let's get another band back together." Yeah, and we were like, but we were a little bit more mature then, so we said, well, we can actually try and be a Christian band, and we really did have a heart for God on that. We really did want to do ministry. We just didn't understand that God is a God of order. We thought that this is what it means to be all things for all people. We can play in a death metal band and glorify God.
Death metal.
But you know, one day Keith called me and he said, "Bro, I went to the abortion clinic and I just like fell out crying." And I'd always sort of been, you know, like I wanted to be Keith's. I wanted to be there to support him with whatever's going on. And so the next day, I went out to the abortion clinic with him, and I fell on my knees and I couldn't get up, and I just was weeping and crying, and, you know, it was like God just convicting me of that, and that changed my life forever, going to that abortion clinic that one time. And from that, we started, you know, went from just praying at the abortion clinic to approaching the women going in at the abortion clinic, "Ma'am, you know, don't do this," to where eventually it led to preaching at the abortion clinic. And we were preaching to the women who were in there. And, you know, I hadn't really even watched any street preaching videos or seen any street preaching. When I was 16, actually, down here in New Orleans, Pastor Paul, who has Vucari Assembly of God, I was leaving a Saints game, and he was out there street preaching. And I saw him, and I was a Christian, and I just walked up, told him thank you, and asked him if he would pray for me. And he prayed that, I remember it clear as day, he said, "I pray that God uses you in unconventional ways." And that's exactly what God did. But anyway, back to the abortion clinic. So we were preaching to the abortion clinic, and we kind of got involved in some different movements, and we realized that abortion is actually a cultural problem. It's not just a problem centered at the clinic. Abortion starts out when people are going and getting pregnant, or when people are going and accepting it, or people are defending laws that defend abortion. And so we said, all right, well, let's step away. So we stepped kind of to the street corner beside the abortion clinic and started preaching to the little section of the city, to the small little businesses, saying, why are you complicit with child sacrifice? Why are you okay with killing baby? You want to support a 20-week ban on abortion, but you're saying that as long as the baby's under 20 weeks, then it's okay. So we started seeing a lot of hypocrisy in the culture. And so we went from the street corner beside the abortion clinic to like, well, maybe we should go and preach at a small parade that's in this area of town. So we preached at the parade at that area of town. Then we're like, well, why don't we just go to the bars in this town or the strip? We said, let's go to the strip club because that's where men are going and getting into all kinds of sexual immorality, and that's probably, and so it all started at that abortion clinic.
Yeah.
And then next thing I knew it, we're preaching all over town. I was preaching, downtown in the parks. We were preaching, and we had been preaching Sunday mornings to the homeless people downtown. And it just, next thing you knew, we were on colleges, passing out tracts, passing out, abolitionist literature and things like that. And then we said, okay, well, we need to take a stand against sin. And we've been watching some street preaching videos. Me and Keith have been talking about it. And we're like, well, I don't know about those guys. They seem pretty extreme. Well, I kind of like this Ray Comfort fella. He seems to have a real solid approach to this, that, and the other. And then we saw these videos of New Orleans Southern decadence. And we were like, whoa, that looks pretty intense. So me and Keith said, oh, well, I guess we'll just go down there. And mind you, at this time, we didn't have anybody else. And every one of our friends, every one of our, literally every single one of our friends were like, y'all have gone crazy, y'all have joined a cult, and everyone departed us. So it was really like...
They were fine with you being in a death metal band, but just not preaching to people.
Oh, man, they loved it. We had people like, oh, man, we want to support your music, and this, that, and the other, and, and so really it was like, well, man, me and Keith and our wives, this is all we got now.
Yeah.
So we had cordoned ourselves off into a place where all we had was ourselves in Christ.
Yeah.
And
quickest way to lose all your Christian friends is to become a street preacher.
That's right. Absolutely. Quickest way to lose your job.
Yeah.
Chances of getting hired.
Yeah.
Funny story, when we first started preaching, I moved to Jackson. I had been in culinary, that whole little culinary world for several years now, and I'd worked in some of the fine dining restaurants in Jackson. And of course, the first time I go to the bar, my last boss, who's a really big chef in Jackson, is there. And anyway, that's the way the Lord works sometimes. And so we decided, well, that's a big sodomite event down there. Let's just go down there and preach. And luckily, we hooked up with some brothers there who really trained us up and really helped us out and really sowed into our lives. And eternally grateful for those brothers who did that.
Amen.
That's great.
Amen.
And then one thing led to another, and then next thing I know, man, I guess I'm a street preacher now.
And here you are out here having sodomites bending over in G-strings and presenting themselves to you.
It's wonderful.
It's the Christian life everybody ever thought of.
When I started following Christ, I said, man, I just hope God makes me worthy to be peed on by a sodomite.
All right. Who are you and what's your story here? How'd you get into this?
My name is Bryan Peden. I started off just handing out. I started off with Ray Comfort, method, and in the parks, handing out gospel tracts, one-on-one conversations, going through "Are you a good person?" which I still will use from time to time. And so then I got convicted to go out to the abortion mill in Jackson, the last one there is. And started just handing out. I was very nervous, very scared, and just wouldn't even talk to the women going in and out. I was just passing out gospel tracts to them pretty much. Then I got to where I was kind of talking to them more, and when I would go. Then I met Brother Keith and Brother Austin, Brother Gabe, that's not with us today. I met them, and they just started talking, like asking if I wanted to go out preaching at the bars, local bars and whatnot. And I was thinking, I don't know, I was unsure of it. But I was still going up to the abortion mill clinic whenever I could. And so one day I was up there, and for some reason everybody else left that was up there with me, pro-life people, and it was just me by myself. So I was. And it was just women going in and out. And I just knew there was a bunch of women inside there. I was trying to pass out gospel tracts to them and even talk with them. And the deaf courts, we call them deaf courts, the escorts, they have pink umbrellas. They'll put them in your face, and they'll keep you from talking to the ladies going in and out, or even the men with them. And so I just went down there and just started praying, walking back and forth on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden, God just had me start just open air preaching. Man, it was powerful preaching. It was I didn't even know I was doing it. Really, it was like it was God. It was just preaching, and loud. People across from the restaurants and other small offices even heard it. It's like it was shaking the whole building and everything. So it was definitely powerful. After that, it wasn't too much longer after that, I was preaching at all the big events in Jackson, and bars and stuff, and been street preaching ever since. I will say this, street preaching is a fear killer, a flesh killer, and a pride killer.
Yeah.
Amen.
Now, you guys are just all egomaniacs, aren't you? I mean, you're just, you guys, I mean, isn't that true? You guys are just glory hounds and egomaniacs. I mean, you guys couldn't draw a big enough crowd with your death metal music, so you thought this was a better. Is that a true statement? You guys are just glory hounds and just, you know.
I do like attention.
Well, let me ask you this: why don't you just leave people alone? You know, why don't you just say, you know, live and let live? Everybody's got their own choices and lifestyles. Why don't you guys just let people, you know, especially we're out on Bourbon Street, they're just out having a good time. Why shouldn't Christians just leave them alone? Anyone? Sure.
I can say that, you know, I grew up in Louisiana. All my friends would go to Mardi Gras. All my friends would go down to, what are you doing this weekend? Oh, I'm driving down to New Orleans. We're going to go to, it was like this big thing, like, my dad's going to let me go to Bourbon Street. And I saw all my friends being led to destruction. And it all goes back to the Bible, you know, as my final authority. And it's my instruction on life. And it's what I look at to see, like, what should I do? Because I've done so much wrong. I've done so many things the wrong way so many times that if I don't do it the way the Bible says, then I'm in the Bible, the verse that, you know, rings clear to my heart for both, you know, just open air preaching, street preaching, or abortion ministry. It says, rescue those who are being led to the slaughter. Mm-hmm. And I see that, you know, the Bible says that all of us like sheep have been led astray. All of us have gone our own way. And I see people, and they're literally wasting their lives. They're going to die, and they're going to go and burn in hell.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm not going to stand by and let my Bible says to love my neighbor as myself. That's right. And I'm not going to let my neighbor, even though it's a crazy sodomite in a G-string, or even if it's someone being led, you know, a girl who's been raped and abused, or even a man, so many of the homosexuals have been raped and abused as children and indoctrinated in this. I'm not going to let them go off into the slaughter. Yeah. If they're going to go to the slaughter, if they're going to go to God's hell that He created for the devil, then they're going to have to go through me warning them the whole way through.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
And now you guys are from Mississippi. I mean, everybody's a Christian in Mississippi. I don't know who can you possibly preach to when you're from Mississippi and everybody's a Christian there. Is that true?
Well, I'd like to answer that one.
Yeah. Go ahead, brother.
Well, as you probably know, we're a cult in Mississippi. We fellowship with some other cults, so you know they're okay.
Please note the sarcasm.
Yes, please note so. We're obviously no, but for real. Who we preach to is the Christians. Isaiah the prophet was told to, he said, God told him, he said, cry aloud, spare not, lift my voice like a trumpet, and show my people their wicked ways. And I do believe, now I believe most of these people are lukewarm and hypocrites, but I do believe there's some people that really, man, they've had horrible shepherds. They're sheep with no shepherd. Yeah. And we haven't done it in a while, but we've preached outside of church doorsteps or doors, whatever. And so we do go to preach to the Christians. In fact, one of the first bar outside of the abortion mill, just right around the corner, that we went to, we just were going because we were like, let's preach other sinful places. Come to find out, it was the Reformed Theological Seminary hangout, pretty much. It was the seminarian hangout, and I don't want to get into all that with the Reformed stuff, but it was where all the Christians hung out. The local church right down the road from the abortion mill, the big Baptist church. Pastor hung out there. The Sunday school teachers hung out there, drank, and just loved on sinners. And so we found out that the majority, at least 80 to 90% of the people we talked to, weren't just nominal Christians, that go to church. They were seminarians. They were Bible trained. They knew our argument. They knew their argument. They knew multiple sides. They knew who Charles Finney was. They knew who John Wesley was. So they knew all this stuff. They knew about great revivals, the Welsh revival. They knew about actual, even things that have happened through the influence of Jesus Christ, the disciples, and going on from there. That we read just church history. I mean, they're knowledgeable, but their hatred of God's truth and their love for Christian liberty, we found, notice I say that, Christian liberty is freedom to abstain. But we found out that there was no desire for holiness. And so our message was, cry aloud and show my people their wicked ways. Yeah. And we knew we were preaching to sinners too, but we knew in Mississippi, that was one of our biggest calls, was to call the church to repentance. And we do desire these lukewarm, nominal Christians, or just those that are sheep that are in bad pastures, We do desire them to come back to their God. And, that is our desire. And just to add to that, I don't do it just so people don't go to hell. Like you said, I do it because I love God. And I obey God. There's a place down the road. There's a place, probably even where we're at, where people aren't worshiping God, where His name is not being exalted. So we do it for God.
Yeah. And, Amen.
So.
Awesome. So that is the just a quick little interview and a quick little introduction to the Sons of Thunder from down under here, the Mississippi boys. We thank you for your service to God down in the South, down in the deep fried South, and thank you very much. God bless you guys.
God bless you.
God bless you, brother.